Hey everybody, this is Zach here with Now You Know, and I am lucky enough to have Joy Skinner with me. She is with Alcen Renewable, and they are a utility scale wind and solar developer out on the West Coast. So I guess the few we've talked before on the phone, and I learned a lot about like what you do, and I was really intrigued to learn that when I think about wind and getting into the wind industry, I think about becoming a wind technician or an engineer. And when I was talking with you before, I learned that there's a whole lot of other jobs that it takes to get utility scale wind up and running. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do. Your official title, I think, is Site Acquisition Manager?
Correct. So, so I'm just going to correct you. It's actually Alcen.
Oh, Alcen, okay.
Yeah, and the easy way to remember that is it's named after Alpha Centauri, the stars closest and furthest away from the sun. So it's a lot of people pronounce it Alcen because that's what it looks like. So just to make a quick correction, but site acquisition manager in a wind development utility scale especially is responsible for acquiring all the land, talking to all the landowners to get their buy-in to be a part of a project. Sometimes it's really easy because you may have a few farmers, maybe 10 to 12 people that all live next door to each other, and they all get together and have a barbecue and decide they're all in. And they, get the lease together, and it's very easy. Specifically in this case, I have over 420 landowners.
Wow.
So it's a lot of hustle just to get in touch with everybody. And also no one lives on these properties in this specific project.
Oh.
So you may find that the owner of the project lives in the Philippines, or they live in Hawaii, so it's not a matter of where I can just jump in my car and drive to their house and have a cup of coffee with them and discuss the project. It's a lot of email and calling and just trying to get in touch. And that's a huge part of the beginning stages of wind farm development or any renewable energy development is getting the okay and the buy-in from the landowners. So that's kind of part of your first scoping mechanism when you start a project, as after you determine, is the wind viable or is it sunny there, if you're talking solar. And then secondly, you start to identify how many people are involved, how many people do I need to reach out to, and you kind of have to become a person of many facets, because not everybody likes the story of renewable, but they like the story of making money. Some people have never been to their land. They don't care. So they're always in because they're going to make a little extra money. And then there's always people you just can't find. Some other components that do come in that I touch on a daily basis is our environmental research and our permitting process, because everything at the end of the day kind of ties back to the land, because if you don't have the land, you can't have a project.
Interesting. So, what if there are some high school or college students out there watching right now thinking about possible careers, what would you tell them are some of the skills that they should be looking to get, or courses that they should be taking if they would like to get into your field, but they don't necessarily want to be, say, wind technicians?
There's a lot of options. For instance, in my position, if someone was interested in the kind of the PR and the getting out and talking with the people, I'd say, some real estate classes, some knowledge of how surveying happens, doing a surveying degree. I don't know how exciting that would be, but, there's people that are very much interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Other jobs that are out there that people don't really realize is, there's mapping technicians for GIS, ArcGIS, which is huge. Without a good foundation in, mapping, topography, the science of actually putting together a site, I can't do my job. So there's a lot of upstream jobs, there's a lot of downstream jobs. Other jobs would include biologists, and cultural anthropologists. They do a lot of work in the renewable energy field.
That's right. We were talking, I think, before how you were saying that sometimes on a project you've got to make sure that environmentally the impact won't affect, let's say, endangered species.
Correct. So it's very broad-reaching. If for some instance a college student or a high school student is looking to renewable, I'm not sure, hey, I don't know what I want to do, but this is where I land. The environmental side of it is huge. It spans from the beginning to the end, and then continuing on through construction, and then also after operation. They do sometimes have biologists on site to actually track endangered species, whether it be birds or bats or ground animals. So it's a job that you could actually join a wind firm as a biologist and be on staff and actually be a part of the staff day-to-day operational. We've gotten resumes with degrees I don't even know. I'm like, what is this? It's like environmental science with a structural engineering background or something crazy. And so it looks and seems like that a lot of colleges and also even high school level are recognizing that there is a whole new pocket of available jobs out there as it comes to renewable. And they're offering those kind of classes and courses that you and I going to school, that was not even a thing. Other jobs, like I kind of briefly touched on, was like cultural. You could be an anthropologist and or even paleontologist and work specifically for a renewable firm. Wow. Because you also have to do those studies when you are going to do a greenfield project, whether it be solar or hydro or any project, any kind of construction, to make sure you identify if there's any tribes in the area, if you're going to be affecting any kind of historical, tribal sites. Specifically in our area, we are working with a tribal council that we will have someone shadowing our cultural anthropologist throughout the site to make sure that we are identifying where they feel is a historical monument.
Now, your company does a lot of wind. I was just looking up that you guys have executed already 2,036 megawatts of wind and solar. You have 500 megawatts in development. You have 1,500 megawatts down the pipeline, and you have avoided 3.3 million tons of CO2 just from the projects that you guys have installed. That must feel really good.
It does. And, it's hard a little bit in the development process because it's kind of like a very slow moving ship. You're at the end game, you're making this huge difference, but while you're doing it, it feels like you're just moving along at an inchworm pace. But then you turn around and look and you're like, wow, a year ago, this is where we were, and now we're here. But it does feel really good to be offsetting, carbon emissions and, fighting the good fight right now to keep renewable in the limelight and to whether or not people agree with climate change or global warming, the bottom line is it's profitable. So first and foremost, it's bringing a whole lot of new jobs, 1.5 million jobs as of last year in wind specifically. So that's huge. I mean, if wind were to go away, think of 1.5 million people that would be touched by that. That's a lot of jobs. Right. But wind specifically, it's very, very profitable for everybody involved. And as it gains more momentum, it's going to be something that no matter what administration we're dealing with at the federal level, they're going to recognize that it brings money into the economy and it's employing the people of America. So we're kind of on that upswing and over that hump of the naysayers of like, oh, this will, go away in a couple of years. It's here to stay. And once we can kind of harness more offshore, I think we're going to even see a larger uptick of profitability from wind in America.
Now, when you're putting together a project, like you said, you have to have lots of parcels of land that all work together to put up these wind turbines. And so what would you say, like percentage-wise, how many percentage of people are just like, yes, I love this idea, I want to go wind, and what percentage are like, that sounds ridiculous, I don't see how that works?
Well, specifically in my area that I'm working now, it's historically a large oil and gas area. I would say about 50-50, maybe 60-40. You have, like I said a little bit ago, if you can show someone how they're going to profit, they tend to put their heart feelings away. Right. Even if they're a diehard oil and gas supporter, if you're like, hey, you still own your mineral rights, you can still drill your land as long as you don't interfere with the wind, and you can get wind and harvest that, and then they're like, oh, okay, sign me up.
Right.
But then there's a lot of people that are just super excited about it. And, it's been interesting, specifically with this project, the age groups of people that are excited versus not excited. It's a sprinkling of everybody, because primarily you would think an older generation would be like, that's poppycock. We don't believe in that,
Right.
but actually they're the ones that are like, I want to do this for my grandkids. I want to make a difference for my family, because I'm not going to be here forever, and my way may not have been the right way. And then you have some younger people that are like totally against it or totally for it. So in this specific situation, it's been about 50-50. I would assume, I can't prove it at this point, I would assume that's probably kind of the idea everywhere.
Okay.
There may be areas like, for instance, if you went to Iowa, because they've made so much money. Texas has the most wind farm, most megawattage coming into the grid in the country, making the most money. And they're old-time oil and gas guys as well. But they believe in the money, and they're starting to, probably breathe easier. Your water's not on fire from fracking. These are all positive things. Right. So, I think as people become more educated with shows such as yours, and just, there's a lot more things in media as well as print, that's kind of explaining the bare bones of these things to help people find how that works for their belief system, regardless of like telling them what it is. They're like, okay, that fits in my puzzle, I'm going to use that. So
have you ever had customers who have kind of reluctantly signed up and then later were like, wow, that worked out way better than I thought?
Yes, we have. We also had a struggle because there was other wind projects that attempted at our site. So they had kind of gone through this before, and it fell through.
Oh, and so they had kind of a bad taste about it.
Yeah, so for me specifically, it's been a large challenge, because it wasn't like I got the first go at these people. Right. Some of these people had gone through this, for the last 10 years, and we've been able to get them back on the side of the fence. But you do see that trend, like I was mentioning, like Iowa, in Texas, where people do see like, hey, the Joneses have a turbine over there, and they're making, Bob Jones is retired,
right.
All of a sudden, right. And this is great, and they're going to Cancun, and they're like, we want to do that too. So, it is a visible thing. One of the hardest things, I think, to explain to people is when you say, we're going to put a turbine on your land, and this happens more so with places that have residents on the land, they think that they can basically plug into the turbine and it's going to power their house.
Gotcha.
So with some people, it's a little bit of a challenge to explain to them, it does power your house, but in a very roundabout sort of way. Right. It has to go into the grid, and then a percentage of that power that powers your house is coming from this. But, when you first approach people, especially on vacant land, they get real excited because they're like, well, then I can build a house.
Right, right.
Well, there's still no transmission to a house. So that's a little bit of a challenge too. And it's becoming, I've noticed even in the last 18 months, since I've been working on this project, people are becoming more knowledgeable, either through news, just being prominent, and social media is pushing it. You see Renewable, conversations and feeds, and people are looking for a different way. I've actually encountered more people lately that kind of have a better idea of how it works, whereas previously I had to explain in great depth how it worked.
That leads me to this question. Do you think that we're approaching some kind of tipping point with wind? Do you think that things are getting better and better, or do you think that it's just kind of staying the same?
I believe that we are ramping up to where it's going to become, way more affordable to do a wind project, and also The technology of the wind turbines is rapidly advancing. So, they're able to do wind projects in places where they may not have been before. There's a little bit of a stalemate right now. There's still a lot of jobs. There's still a lot of projects, going on. And the nice thing about development of a project is it's 3 to 5 years, sometimes 3 to 7 years.
Wow.
So, dependent on what part you play in that game, you could be on a project for almost a decade. Or you could just like poke in, to your little niche on a bunch of different projects and keep working. Right now, it's a little bit difficult to answer that question with a great answer, just because there is some pushback, at the federal level. We don't have the entire support that we used to. We do still, though, have our production tax credits, which we were kind of concerned, I believe, when you and I last talked.
Right.
We still hadn't confirmed that we were going to keep those. Luckily, they left those unscathed.
Oh, good.
So we still have the 5-year step down from 100% production tax credit for turbines to, a 20%, which at that point, it doesn't become as profitable, but in comparison, where oil and gas have been getting, tax credits forever, we'll take what we can get. And so you'll be seeing a large push for projects to be operational by the end of 2020 and 2021, because 2020 is when the 100% PTC phases out, and then 2021 is when the 80% phases out.
Interesting.
So there's a big rush right now for people to partner up, buy turbines, get them safe harbored, so those are ready to go, and then you are applicable within that PTC credit.
Gotcha. And then I was looking at your website, and Ed Duggan had a cool video where he talks about his childhood and how he went to the UMass right here in Massachusetts and got really excited about wind from some professors that he had. What is your story? How did you get interested in wind? What got you into this field?
I kind of had a strange journey into wind. Being a Colorado native, I've always been a little more environmentally conscious. My mom was an environmental researcher way back in the 80s. She did ground samples for like the MX missile testing and stuff like that. So I always kind of had that, my dad did marine biology in California, so he kind of, instituted a lot of the science stuff. But I originally went to school for audio engineering. So I'm into music, and I went to music school, and I worked at a record label, and I came to LA and worked on some movies, did that, and ended up feeling like I was kind of in a rat race. So I looked for just a temporary job that I could kind of be a beach bum, and I ended up in oil and gas as a contract manager. So I was working for a valve, and I then worked at a pump company. I was constantly on the other side of the fence of what the beliefs of the majority of my coworkers. I liked my job. I liked what I did. But at the end of the day, I was like, this is not what I want to pour my soul into. I want to be a part of something new and bigger. And I walked away from that job, my career, basically, and I told my husband, I said, I'm not going to take another full-time job until I'm doing it in a renewable field, whether it be solar or wind. And I just happened to answer an ad for Alcen, and now here I am working renewable, living the dream. So
that's great.
But it was basically it was kismet, really. I mean, it was very serendipitous. Like, I basically just put it out there and didn't know. I didn't know if there was anything out there yet, because I was always looking for, like, hey, if there's more, because I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a meteorologist, and I don't have that highly specified, schooling for those tasks. So, I was like, you got to get in where you fit in, but there was nowhere to fit in for a really long time. But, to circle back to our initial conversation, there's a lot of places to fit in. Anymore, you can almost apply any education level, background, knowledge pool, and put it somewhere in this field. And I just think with, as it evolves more, I think there'll be a job for, I can't say a job for everyone, but I think there'll be something for everyone if they're interested whatsoever in renewable energy. Ed, that guy probably only sleeps like 3 or 4 hours a night,
Wow,
maybe.
I believe it.
I get emails from him at 2 a.m, and sometimes I'm up because I'm like, I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my God, I can't go back to sleep. I'm going to just do some work. And I'll write him an email and he'll respond to me. And I'm like, why are you up at 3:30? He's like, why are you up at 3:30? And then I'll write him at 7 a.m. and he's up writing emails back. And I'm like, oh man. So he actually accused me recently. He's like, stop following in my footsteps. He's like, it's a quick way to the grave. I was like, yeah, I need a little more than 4 hours a night.
Right.
So, but yeah, he does get a lot done. So.
Wow. Yeah, he seems like a really inspirational guy.
He is, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's, especially, and I'm a weirdo. Like, I can go to a wind farm at any given time. I do every time I go out to site. I go to operating wind farms, and I just stand there and look at them because they're so calming to me, and I just think they're beautiful. And it's kind of weird because people are like, you take pictures every time you go out there and they're not changing. I'm like, but I love them. But, he was part of the original movement in California back in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still drive over that wind wall between Mojave and Bakersfield, and you can still see those, old lattice style, little short, stubby kilowatt blade, turbines. That's like his legacy. Right. So I mean, it gives you almost goosebumps when you're out there because you just see the entire, evolution of wind and turbines from little guys that are only 80 meters up to ones that are 500 feet tall. So
that's cool.
It is pretty intense. I mean, if you're ever out this way, let me know and we'll get you a proper tour of the wind wall, and you'll be pretty amazed.
Oh, cool.
Do it in the spring.
Okay.
Don't do it in the summer because it's hot and hot and hot out there.
Okay.
But springtime's a really good time because there's a lot of poppy bloom, and it kind of shows where this symphony between environmental and also the machinery of the turbines to kind of meet and work together in concert. And it's kind of cool
that's really cool
to see all those wildflowers out there blooming and stuff, which it's going to be a great one this year because it's so wet. So
that's awesome. And so, Joy, if our viewers are interested in more information about wind and renewables, are there places that they could go to on the web?
Absolutely. At the federal level, there's AWEA, which is the American Wind Energy Association. You can get them at www.awea.org.
Okay.
They have career paths. They have, job ideas. They have all kinds of information on the state of wind in America, especially at a federal level.
That's great.
Yeah, there's also, for specifically women, there's a organization called RISE, WRISE, which stands for Women, gotta look that up again, sorry, Women of Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energy. It used to be called WOW, which was Women of Wind. You can probably look up Women of Wind as well.
That was more catchy, right?
It's a little easier to say. It rolls off the tongue. But you can go to WRISEenergy.org for information. They have a career center. They have chapter meetings where you can just join. You can go. They even have kind of talent scouting. Lots of really cool things for any women that want to get involved with wind.
That's great.
And also, look to the internet because a lot of times there's going to be a state level organization as well. For instance, in California, it's CalWEA. Another great media outlet, as I'm sure you've heard of, Green Tech Media. They do a lot of write-ups on available jobs, on interesting stories in the industry of up-and-coming technology. So that may be another place folks can go and get some ideas and some information on where to go.
That's great. That's really helpful. Those are great resources. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I hope that there's some people out there watching who might just be thinking about, what am I going to do with my life? And might just be thinking like you did, I want to do something in renewables. And there are jobs out there for you now, and a lot more than when you started even.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, and that was just in the last 18 months. So we can only imagine, with technology doubling, in roughly 9 to 12 months now, just think of the opportunities that are there that we haven't even seen yet.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. I hope that the weather gets a little bit better for you out on the West Coast there and things get safer. And I wish you the best of luck with your upcoming wind projects.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it, and good luck with your project as well.
Thank you, Joy. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.